Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for inviting me to give you a very short presentation as part of your conference this year as a Tanzania Pharmaceutical Students Association. It really is a great pleasure to be able to just share very quickly with you some of my thoughts about what the role of pharmacists, pharmacy technicians, and pharmacy students is in tackling antimicrobial resistance. I'm sure you probably know this already, but I thought it's always a good way to start. It's just to clarify that when we talk about antimicrobial resistance, we're talking about resistance of a microorganism to an antimicrobial that it was previously susceptible to or originally sensitive to. And by that, we mean viruses, bacteria, parasites, or fungi. We often talk about antibiotic resistance because majority of the medicines we use that are antimicrobials are antibiotics, but actually any of the microorganisms becoming resistant or not being as sensitive to these medicines that they were previously sensitive to is a collective term of antimicrobial resistance. And so why should we be worried? This is a very short presentation, so I'm just going to go through very few slides and just to give you a flavor. If you want to find out more, we have done webinars through Commonwealth Pharmacists Association. So the future, if we do not act now, is that it has been done through a review that by 2050, there will be 10 million deaths each year caused by antimicrobial resistance, and that this will cost more than £66 trillion for the global economy, and that there will be more deaths from drug-resistant infections than there is from cancer or diabetes or other diseases that we're currently worried about. So it's really important that we act now. It's also really important because antimicrobial resistance is increasingly a serious threat to any gains that we're making in the health and development, and for the attainment of the Sustainable Development Goals that have been published. Antimicrobial resistance can compromise the achievement of the SDGs, and it can affect health security, affect poverty, economic growth, and food security. So it is really important that action is taken across all sectors to mitigate and prevent and control antimicrobial resistance. Tackling antimicrobial resistance is really important, and everybody has a role. The government have a role, professional bodies, so the Tanzania Pharmaceutical Students Association or the pharmacist equivalent, public health agencies, medical professional bodies, all have a role. We as healthcare professionals and future healthcare professionals, both in human and animal health, have a role to play. The public have a role to play, and pharmaceutical companies have a role to play as well. I put pharmaceutical companies last because yes, we need new medicines, but if we do not use the medicines that we have currently, if we do not use them appropriately, then the resistance will happen even when we have new medicines developed. So what can pharmacists do? So this talks about pharmacists, and this is a WHO document, but actually as pharmacy students, you have a role as well. And so we have a role around making sure that we dispense antibiotics only as they are needed, and that they are following a prescription from a clinician, and that it's the right antibiotic for the right patient, the right dose, and the right duration as well. When patients are seeking treatments for coughs and colds, coughs and flu, or those symptoms that are similar to colds, coughs, then it's important that we explain to them when antibiotics are not needed, and to give them alternatives that will help them manage their symptoms in those times, and also to refer them appropriately to a clinician. It is also important that we understand the symptoms and when patients should seek further help as well. It's important that we also explain to patients or to members of the public the importance of preventing infections in the first instance. This can be done through vaccinations as appropriate, hand washing, and self-care, looking after themselves properly. These are just some very, very few ideas for you. And as students, you can already do this. You can educate fellow students, you can educate members of the public, and if you get an opportunity to shadow or work within a pharmacy, you obviously have access to patients, and you can also use some of these tips there. At a strategic level, for pharmacy professional bodies, there is a role around contributing to and developing an implementation of your national action plan. And actually, by including antimicrobial resistance as part of your conference, you are doing that as well as an association. You can develop and implement antimicrobial stewardship across the organization, regionally or nationally, so either within the Students Association or working with your pharmacists, your pharmacist association as well. You can lead awareness campaigns, and we've heard a lot about the awareness campaigns that you have been leading. And in fact, the amazing work that you did through the different localities in Tanzania, what was mentioned in a TED talk that we did recently, because it was amazing to see that you all went to your various homes and regions and educated members of public there. You can contribute to calls to change legislation or enforcement of regulations. So where antibiotics are prescription only, that they stay as such, bearing in mind the importance of patient safety as well. You can also contribute to or promote antibiotic consumption surveillance, perhaps the Pharmacist Association, but actually, could you support in collecting data as well? Something that every single one of you can do today is that if you are prescribed an antibiotic, that you take them exactly as prescribed, don't save them for later, and do not share them with others. I'm going to end now and invite you to become an antibiotic guardian. Antibiotic Guardian is a website where you can choose a pledge about how you plan to contribute to tackling antimicrobial resistance. And there are a range of pledges for all healthcare professionals, for human and animal health, for members of the public, and also for students, educators, and scientists. So may I invite you to choose a pledge today. And there are a range of pledges for the pharmacy profession, but there are also pledges for students as well. So example of a pharmacist pledge will be that, or you as pharmacist students, if you are working within a pharmacy, is that you will check that an antibiotic prescription complies with local guidelines and query those that do not. Or that every time a patient presents with a self-limiting respiratory infection, like I mentioned, you will give them patient information and explain to them how long it may last for and why they may not need antibiotics. And after you pledge, you also get a certificate. So you can display your certificate proudly, either in a pharmacy shop or at home or in your university, or perhaps post it on social media and proudly say that you have chosen a pledge about how you plan to support tackling antimicrobial resistance. Everybody has a role, and we need all of us to join in the fight. I'm going to end by just telling you very briefly. So as you know, I'm Diana Shirodokwe. I'm the global AMR lead for the Commonwealth Pharmacists Association. I'm also the lead pharmacist for antimicrobial resistance at Public Health England. And I'm inviting you today as pharmacist students to consider joining as a free membership of the Commonwealth Pharmacists Association as future members. Get signed up to get the newsletter. You can find out more about what we're doing to tackle antimicrobial resistance, but also what we're doing for pharmacists across the whole of the Commonwealth. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you have found this valuable and useful, and I wish you an enjoyable conference and very best wishes for the rest of the year and your future as well.